Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to take a call in this second reading and to register Labour's support for this bill as we hopefully begin to draw to a close a very shameful period of worker exploitation in New Zealand waters. It is to the Government's credit that a ministerial inquiry was established to investigate and find solutions to this stain on our nation's economy and reputation. And it's also to their credit that they adopted the recommendations of the inquiry, but went further with the requirement in this bill to make it compulsory that every fishing vessel operating in our waters, including our exclusive economic zone, must be flagged as New Zealand ships from the 1st of May 2016, and as such will come under the full jurisdiction of New Zealand law. This brings New Zealand's treatment of foreign fishing vessels into line with the rest of the developed world. The only other countries that don't require reflagging are Namibia and Brazil. It's also to the Minister's credit, as he has outlined tonight, that he will be introducing an SOP at committee stages to firm the bill up again by removing the majority of exemptions proposed by the Select Committee, which would risk undermining the intent and effectiveness of this legislation. I wasn't part of the Select Committee process, Mr Speaker, but I have taken a great deal of interest in this issue in my former role as Labour spokesperson and immigration spokesperson, and indeed I have met with some of these workers over time and also the people that are caring for them. And I know that the people on the Select Committee, the members on the Select Committee, will have heard from many of the people that helped expose this, what's been described as modern-day slavery in our waters. And I just want to pay my respects, acknowledge them, Mr Speaker, if I may, Darren Colston, who has relentlessly advocated for cruise wages to this day, including the unpaid minimum wages still owed to families of the drowned seamen from the Oyang 70. Glenn Simmons and Dr Christina Stringer, who produced that now infamous report called Not in New Zealand's Waters Surely, the faith-based organisations and the Maritime Union, who have taken abused foreign crew under their wings when there was no government support or agency willing to listen or to help. The Service and Food Workers Union, who have campaigned for years on this issue, but on the basis that New Zealand jobs are affected and undermined by this scandal, and have campaigned for a value-added approach to our fishing industry, as opposed to this low-cost model of foreign chartered vessels. I also do want to pay my respects to Peter Talley. It's not often I do that, but Peter and Michael Talley have been adamantly supporting the reflagging proposals for some time. They have been very outspoken against foreign fishing vessels, foreign chartered vessels and their abuse, and saying that they have no place in New Zealand waters. And so they have been great advocates for change, and I really acknowledge them for that. And there are many others, Mr Speaker, and we should be grateful to them, because it's not acceptable to Labour, and I'm sure to the rest of the House, that we have an industry that's been surviving on the exploitation of vulnerable migrants working in conditions that no one in New Zealand would accept. But I also want to pay tribute to the many Indonesian, Korean and fishing crew from other nations who've been brave enough to walk off their ships, to tell their stories of abuse, sexual and physical assault, inhumane punishment and critical underpayment of wages, and in some cases debt bonding. We haven't treated them that well. Some who came off the ships were deported immediately, mercilessly I'd have to say. Those who were able to remain had to rely on the charity of the community. For many of these crew, little has changed since the ministerial inquiry. Most of them still wait to be paid what they were legally entitled to under New Zealand law at the time, which was minimum wage plus $2 an hour, including, as I mentioned, the families of the 6 seamen who were drowned in the Oyang 70 sinking in 2010. The coroner's inquest into that sinking found that systematic failure of ship management and safety practices, together with routine violations of maritime rules and seafaring practice, were responsible for what led up to the sinking. The coroner also criticised aspects of New Zealand's ship safety management process, and that's something Maritime New Zealand needs to front up to. There's no doubt there was a systemic failure to ensure standards and processes put in place by the 2006 Code of Practice that's been discussed tonight, which required minimum wage plus a premium to be paid and New Zealand conditions to be observed. Rotten practices have been permitted to take hold in this industry, and I put a lot of that down to not the good intentions of politicians who have tried to address this through codes and now legislation, but a lack of enforcement by under-resourced agencies, immigration, labour and fishing. Darren Colston told the Select Committee that he estimated the amount of underpayment of wages to the tens of thousands of crew on foreign chartered vessels as being in excess of $200 million. Those workers still have not been paid, and they still hope for justice today. And you do have to ask, Mr Speaker, what's happened to those missing millions? While the government kept a very small number of crew in New Zealand to make submissions to the inquiry, they quickly sent them home once that was completed. We've heard the stories of what's happened when they've gone home. Their families have been threatened. They've been unable to find other work, yet there is money owed to them that we have not been able to recover. And I don't believe that any government agency is working to deal with this redress. And in my opinion, passing this bill will not put an end to those injustices until every cent owed to these fishers is recovered and paid. So while we support the bill and it's critical to address the appalling human rights abuses, safety concerns and issues around the illegal dumping of fish on these foreign chartered vessels, we do have one or two things that we would like to have seen. The bill stops short of securing opportunities for Kiwi workers and Kiwi jobs. Foreign crewed vessels, foreign chartered vessels will still be able to use entirely foreign crew, which will continue to see New Zealand workers shut out. Labour's policy on this has always been clear. We would encourage maximum participation by New Zealand in our fisheries and seafood processing, moving towards a minimum of 50% New Zealand crew on any vessel fishing within New Zealand's exclusive economic zone. We're also questioning the government's decision to delay the introduction of reflagging for 4 years to allow foreign chartered vessels and their partners to come to terms with the changes. A 4-year transition is a very long time, and it gives a lot of room for an awful lot of abuse. One of the things I remain concerned about, Mr Speaker, is the lack of resources and commitment made to enforcing these changes. We all know that Labour, Immigration and Fisheries inspectors have been under repeated restructuring, and they will struggle. And the government has given no assurances that we can expect to see a stepping up of enforcement, and particularly in the area of observers on foreign chartered vessels. Now, that is not an easy job. That is a tough job, and some people have proposed that they should not have to go to sea on their own, and I tend to agree with that. The intimidations and threats against the families of crew, together with language barriers and difficulties of access to New Zealand's support institutions, continue today, despite the updating of the code that the government brought in a couple of years. And this means that abuses of fishing crew are likely to remain underreported. So, while we want to see this issue resolved, I have doubts, unfortunately, that we will see it resolved unless the government commits to proper inspection and enforcement of this new law. I have no doubt this House is serious about eliminating this most evil of exploitation, and when that's matched by intensive resourcing, inspection and prosecution, we may begin to hope that acceptable and equitable New Zealand labour standards will be finally applied in all fishing vehicles operating in New Zealand waters.
Stephen Browning.
I rise to speak to the Fisheries, Foreign Chartered Vessels and Other Matters Amendment.